Hi, it's Lee from Beanstalk Audio. I just wanted to explain to you how the loops work and how you can use them in your productions. Now, if you want some free loops, go to my website, beanstalkaudio.com, and then go to music and free music beds. And there's an explanation here in a video from me explaining it. And then if you click on the link to go to the actual loops, you'll see that I have a number of loops here, and I'm always adding to these, so you can get these absolutely free, and these work in the same way these loops do. But if you support me and purchase my music, which is always gratefully received, you would get quite a few more loops and the full version of everything as well. So for instance, here's a track pack, and I've got all these different version lengths, and I've got different loops, and I try and get as many things out of one track as I can. So just to explain the loops, there's loop 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and then there's a loop end and a loop intro and some loop joiners in this pack. Now what this means is that you can put these together. So on your video timeline, and I'm not using a video editor, I'm using an audio editor, but it's the same principle. But on your video software, in your timeline for your audio, you can actually use these things. So for instance, loop 1, I'll just drag it into the DAW. So loop 1 sounds like this. I'll just loop it so you can hear how it works. I won't play the whole thing, but we will play the beginning. So there you go, that's the beginning of it, and I'll just jump towards the end. It should loop seamlessly. So what we can do now, I've got the loop intro here. So because you might not want to just start abruptly like that, you know, it's a bit of it's a jolt. Now, I mean, you could just do the typical thing and fade it in. That's easy enough to do, and that's absolutely fine. But you might want to have an intro on this, and the intro should work. So the loop intro loop will go to loop 1, and here it is. Well, as you can hear, it's perfectly seamless. So you could extend this to fit your timeline, and you might then want to duplicate loop 1 so that continues a bit longer. So you could do that, and then you might decide that, well, that's long enough, I'll put the end on it. Now, the loop end usually works best with the last loop. So in this case, it'd be loop 4. But I haven't used loop 4 here, so let's see if it works with loop 1. You might get away with that. It went a bit loud. Let's try it with the loop that it's designed to work with. So loop 4. And there you go. So you can play around with these. You can combine loops in different sort of arrangements and see how they work together. But by providing the loop end and the loop intro, you can sort of have a start and end to your loop, which is always quite helpful. Now, the loop joiners are a curious thing, but they are quite useful at times, because there might be a case where you want to join two loops together that don't actually loop together. So for instance, 1 and 2, let's get rid of some of these out of the way. Well, I've got loop 1 here, and I'm going to get loop 2. Now loop 1 and 2, let's have a listen. This doesn't quite work. So what the loop joiner does, it's the section between the two that was taken out to make the loop. And by putting it back in, it actually joins the two up. So you can actually then, make the track as long as you like by joining all these bits up. So what you'd do if you were using individual loops, say you were using some of the free loops and you only had like one loop from each track, rather than let it get really repetitive, you could mix in other loops. So I've got 2 loops here. They're probably not the most appropriate loops to mix into each other, but you'll get the idea. So just a simple fade out. And a simple fade in. Now, you could probably hear that, but if you're talking over it and you're using it just as a background to your video and you're talking through things and explaining things in your videos, then people aren't really going to notice these joins, but the subtle change in music will keep people interested.